The Baseball Together Network presents the Seattle Baseball Together podcast with your host, Blackjack Brad, and now, Seattle Baseball Together.
Welcome back to this month's episode of the Seattle Baseball Together podcast. I am your host, I am Brad, and I am here for this month's therapy session for Seattle Mariners fans. This month I had an excellent interview with the Griffey Collector. It's his account name on Instagram. His name is Kolius. So I'm going to get into that here in just a minute. But first, I wanted to recap the month of May just by going through a quick 3 up, 3 down. Things that I liked, things that I didn't like from the month. You know, from the middle of the month here, it was pretty easy to go 3 down on this. I'll be honest with you. April, the Mariners finished 15-12. I was pretty happy with that. But so far, it's Saturday night, May 29th right now. The Mariners are up 3-1 in the top of the 9th inning. 10-15 record for the month. Hopefully we'll hold on to that for an 11-15 record for this month. I feel like they rallied here. It was pretty dark there a little while for this month. But man, had a good last week of the month here, I guess. So let's start with 3 ups here. First, Kellenick got called up. That was absolutely outstanding. I was very excited for that. He hasn't shown that he's the chosen one quite yet, but there is some evidence that he will be very good. We've seen some flashes of solid, I guess. But this is my big takeaway with Kellenick so far. It feels like he's pressing. There is a lot of pressure on him. There's a whole lot of pressure on him. I mean, he's putting it on himself. He didn't sign an extension with the Mariners last year when they offered it, and I don't blame him. Bet on yourself and make more money in a few years. No reason not to. I don't blame him for doing that, but I feel like he's putting a lot of pressure on himself. It feels like he's trying to hit 2-run home runs with nobody on base. You see how frustrated he gets when he strikes out, and I get it. It's frustrating to strike out, but he's got to understand that that's the big league game right now. He's going to strike out. He's going to strike out a lot. And when he can accept that, he's going to have a lot more success. I think most of what he's seeing right now is mental, and he'll be able to get over it. You know, he'll get past that feeling of pressing, trying to do too much, and we're going to see the Jared Kellenick that we've all been expecting. Another up that we had this month, and this is really here at the end of the month. The offense seems to be picking up. We've seen a few more home runs, which, you know, I'm not somebody who likes to live and die by the home run, but when you see them, it's encouraging because balls aren't just going out; they're dropping for doubles. We got a lot of guys hitting a lot of doubles right now. It's outstanding. Kyle Lewis is one of them. He's hitting home runs and doubles, and I'm very happy about that. Excited to see that with him. And my third up, which kind of leads into my first down, is that the Mariners did not get no hit 3 times this month, and very well could have. So I can't remember who it was, but somebody took a no hitter into the 8th inning. It got broken up, and I was very happy to see that because it was just a couple days after getting no hit against the Orioles. You know, that one came on May 5th against the Orioles. John Means no hit the Mariners, and then just 13 days later, right? It was May 18th. Yeah, Spencer Turnbull with the Tigers no hit the Mariners, and that was a really embarrassing day to be a Mariners fan. I feel like, you know, but then you have the realization that the Indians have been no hit twice, and then the very next day the Rangers were no hit for the second time this season, and that's not a group to be proud of, but it does make you feel a little bit better. You know, that we're not the only team that's been no hit 3 times. You know that. We're struggling, so are those other teams. The Rangers are not good, but the Indians, I feel like, are not a bad team. Those were kind of anomalies, and I feel like the Mariners can be kind of that middle road of those teams. I still maintain that I feel like this team's going to finish around or above 500. This month was really bad with injuries, things like that, and that gets me into my second down. Is, man, the injuries have been so bad, and some of it's been COVID. The Mariners are among the least vaccinated teams, and I'm not going to get into that, but I feel like there needs to be something going on. If those guys aren't getting vaccinated, they do need to be careful because they're missing time, they're hurting the team. The best ability is availability, right? So that's an issue that seems to be like it's ongoing and will continue to be if they don't figure out how to keep non-vaccinated guys safe from COVID. The last thing is that, man, The catching has not been good. Has not been good. It's been really frustrating. We had Tom Murphy and Luis Torrens there for a little while. Was really bad, and he cost the Mariners some runs defensively, and I was really frustrated by that. That was more frustrating to me than it was getting no hit those 2 times. I felt like, it was defensive lapses. It was not making the tag on a non-force play at the plate. It was letting the ball bounce off your chest that you could have easily fielded and made a tag at the plate. It was bad. It was really bad with Torrens. Finally, he was optioned down to AAA, and then Tom Murphy had a rough couple of days, and he's not the best hitter either. So it's like, at what point do we want Mike Zunino back? Because, if we're going to take a minus offensively, which we were getting from Torrens and we were getting from Murphy, but we need that plus defensively. We need somebody who's going to at least give us a plus on one side of the ball, and that's what Zunino was. He can go out there and hit 150 to 200, hit a few home runs, strike out some, whatever. I don't care. But, man, the defense that Zunino brought and the way that he managed the pitching staff was outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. I don't feel like it's a coincidence that the Rays pitching staff is as good as it is with Zunino behind the plate. It's a big deal. At some point I feel like they've just got to bring Cal Raleigh up. I know they brought up Jose Godoy, and he's been good. He's been solid. But if they've been selling Cal Raleigh as the guy of the future, he's a switch hitting catcher, you've got to bring him up at some point. Because, he's got to be the guy, I don't know. It's frustrating to see the Mariners so bad behind the plate, especially as somebody who grew up catching as much as I did. But anyway, those are my 3 up, 3 downs for the month of May. Let's get into it. We have the Griffey Collector next. Welcome back, baseball family. I'm here with Evan Kolius. He is the Griffey Collector. I've been following Evan for a while on Instagram, and as a huge Griffey fan myself, and I'm sure most Mariners fans are going to be along the same lines there, that you're really interested in what he has. So I was like, man, I got to talk to this guy and find out what the deal is. So first off, Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This whole Instagram thing has been kind of a flurry of activity the last 6-9 months, and it's kind of caught me off guard a little bit.
So what was it that got you started on Instagram?
So I've had this Griffey collection for years. Honestly, I started collecting junior stuff back in 1989 when I first kind of became aware of him, and I've just been accumulating stuff and slowed down in college because I was broke and like everyone else, and kind of picked back up when I became a responsible adult. And during the pandemic, COVID times, it's been really boring, and I had all this stuff, and we recently moved into a new house, and my girlfriend, I could just tell she wasn't going to let me have a giant museum-esque shrine to Junior. So I have all this stuff. It's all boxed up. And so in a way for me, it originally started just as a way for me to look at my collection. I wasn't going to pander for followers or anything like that. And so I just started taking pictures. I got a $40 light box off of Amazon, and just started taking decent pictures of the stuff and posting them, and wasn't tagging it with any kind of caption or hashtags or anything like that. And so then I started posting stuff, and about probably 5 or 6 posts in in the first 3 days, I was just like, holy crap, I'm approaching hundreds of followers. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, I better go back and make captions and explain what the stuff is and put hashtags on it for visibility and stuff. And so it's been a learning process. I wasn't ever, my personal Instagram has 100 followers. There's nothing there. So yeah, but that's what drove me to do it. Is just, it wasn't for other people. It's become for other people, but it was mostly just for me in a way to look at my stuff without dominating the house with it.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Do you do chat books with your Instagram on that? Is that a way that you kind of document those pictures, or you just keep it straight on Instagram?
Just keep it straight on Instagram. I started deleting them off my phone because I had just hundreds of pictures. I was like, oh, I got to turn it this way. I got to turn it this way. And I wish I would have kept the raw, the big actual pictures, but it's just the ones on Instagram. I figure I can always fire up the light box again and start taking pictures of stuff again if I really wanted to have them ready to go. But Instagram's a good medium for that. the resolution on the pictures, you lose a little bit, but I mean, you can still see all the details for the junior stuff pretty well.
Yeah, you're right. Instagram is actually that's something I really thought about, because I know you lose some with Facebook, but with Instagram you do keep the resolution pretty good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was your first piece of junior memorabilia that you got? Do you know exactly what it was?
It was probably some stadium giveaway or a baseball card. My earliest recollection of junior is in 1989. My dad and some little, I think would have been seven, so probably about first grade, kindergarten. Well, no, it would have been after kindergarten. So like first, second grade.
Mhm.
And we went to a Mariners game, and my dad pointed out, the Mariners sucked then. They have for a majority of their 40 years. And
Mine is a small window. Yeah, they
yeah,
have
a little window of like 4 or 5 years there in the late 90s. But yeah, I mean, he made a point to go, hey, check that out. There's a kid running towards us. I mean, I'm 7, juniors at that point 19.
Mhm.
And he was running towards us. We had crappy bleacher seats in the center field bleachers of the Kingdom, and he made a point to go, hey, look, that's the guy everyone's talking about. That's Ken Griffey Jr. And it's so funny that you just reminded me of a thing. One of the Instagram followers from the junior feed, the Griffey Collector feed, he was talking with me one time, and he goes, man, for the first like 6 months that I was aware of Griffey, I thought his name was King Griffey Jr. And I was like, oh my, I couldn't believe it. My head exploded because I was the same way. I mean, I was like 7, and I was just getting into baseball, playing t-ball at that point probably.
Yeah.
And I did for like the first maybe 4 or 5 months of me being aware of number 24. I thought his name was King Griffey Jr. So I mean, it kind of fits, but it took me a while to get it.
It does. That's funny you bring that up, because when I was like, oh man, how old was I? I was like, I was like 8 or 9, maybe 10, something like that. I was living in a dinky little town in Utah. It was just like me and like 4 or 5 of my friends. Like I had introduced them all to baseball pretty much, and it's like, dude, this Griffey guy is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
what's his name? Ken Griffey Jr. And I had a friend, the same thing, King Griffey Jr. We had like our little fan club meeting one night, and he wrote something down. I was like, it's Ken, right? He's like, oh, I thought it was King.
Yeah,
a couple of guys like, yeah, I did too.
I forget. There's a term for that, for when one word bleeds into another, and it's the Ken and then the G in Griffey that makes it sound like King Griffey Jr. if you say it really quick. But yeah, I was referring to him at school as King Griffey Jr. and all that. So but that's probably my earliest memory. As far as an item goes, it's probably just a baseball card, random baseball card. The first post of the Griffey Collector Instagram feed was felt necessary to put the 89 Upper Deck rookie as my first post, and mine's not graded. I kick myself now at the state of the hobby and the way that prices have just shot up over the last like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
I didn't jump on like the Griffey 89 Upper Deck graded ones when they were like $200. You go way back. Yeah, but I mean, when the graded ones, I can distinctly remember 2 or 3 years ago looking at those going, I should pick up a PSA 10 of that card. And they were like, 250, maybe 300. And then they went up to 500. I was like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not getting them then. But now they're up to, $4,000 for a graded Gem Mint 10. But that's probably the first piece of junior memorabilia, if you will, that I remember.
Yeah. It does seem like baseball cards went up overnight, because it was like, for a long time, it was like, it's just worthless cardboard now. It's not worth anything. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here come baseball cards again.
Well, there's a reason they call it the junk wax era, and that's what pretty much. I'm 38 years old. You and I are probably around the same age, and the junk wax era. We can get into like the numbers of it, but I mean, they made 1 billion versions of 1 billion different cards back in the mid to late 80s, all the way up through about the mid 90s, and because of the print populations of these cards, even the superstar, the junior, I mean, that 89 Upper Deck Griffey, yeah, it's a rare card to get in like mint condition, but I mean, there's still millions of copies of that thing, and so they refer to it as the junk wax era. And now all those cards with guys like you and my age all those cards are becoming popular again because we're reliving our youth and people are
Yeah.
following my Instagram account and other accounts like mine. And it's getting popular again. So the prices are just skyrocketing. It's crazy.
Yeah. That specific card I think is the one that I have seen the most around of like the cards that I've always wanted but never
Right.
had. Like there were plenty of cards that
Right.
I had that it was like, like I was talking about how I had like a bajillion Paul Molitor cards growing up, and
Yeah.
and so I knew who he
Yeah.
was, same with Carlos Baerga, but I had very few Griffey cards. But that rookie card is the
Right.
one that I've seen most common. I think my uncle has like 4 of them, but it's one that I was never
Yeah.
able to get my hands on.
Well, they're pretty easy to find now, especially, I mean, with the resurgence of Griffey's popularity. I mean, he's never really disappeared out of public eye or pop culture or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his Nike shoe brand obviously helps. The Swingman brand has never gone away,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that 89 Upper Deck rookie card of his it's transcended his stuff. It's iconic in sports card world, period, because it
Mm-hmm.
was the first Upper Deck card they ever made, literally number one of this first set they ever made.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it's the perfect storm for nostalgia and collectability and value. But
Yeah. Speaking of Griffey kind of swinging to, I guess,
yeah.
no pun intended, but kind of to and
Yeah.
from the light. Like, do you actually collect any Cincinnati stuff, or is it all Seattle stuff?
So I've had that question because if you look at I'm like 130 posts in now,
Mm-hmm.
from everything from baseball cards to figures to hats to whatever. And I haven't posted any Cincinnati stuff for a few reasons. One, I just don't collect it. That was once he left. It's not like, he stopped being good. Obviously, the injury bug caught him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For those years after Seattle. Even when he was in Seattle, he was injured a little bit, but not as bad, not near as bad as he was in Cincinnati.
Right.
But once I was 17, I think, when Junior was traded,
Mm-hmm. That'd be about
and
right. Yeah.
that was I had a pretty normal, pretty mundane suburban Seattle life, and that was traumatic as hell. I was so crushed when he was traded. I remember that morning, my routine was to turn on ESPN and just watch Sports Center, the early edition of Sports Center. Of course, that's the headline, and
Yeah.
in the Seattle newspapers around, there was buzz of it. We knew that there was a chance that he would go, and then it turned out that the narrative changed to he wants to go, and that was heartbreaking. And but boy, that morning when he was traded, that was one of the worst. I mean, yeah, family deaths and all that, obviously, but I mean, that was the one of the worst mornings ever. I remember shedding a tear as a 17-year-old trying to be tough, but that was traumatic. And once he left Seattle, it wasn't like he was dead to me or anything. He was still my favorite sports star of all time. But
Right. Yeah.
the collecting and the desire to like watch him every game and all that kind of stuff, that just kind of left. And so it's still hard, like 20 years later, looking at him in a Cincinnati Reds uniform. I know he's got his dad played there and all that, and he grew up in that dugout. And so I mean, he needed to go home for him to Cincinnati. But I think if you got Junior in a room just with you and said, "Look, man, off the record, do you think you should have left Seattle?" And I think he would be honest. I don't. I think he would say, "Nah, I should have just stayed. I should have just stayed." And so that's kind of why I don't post a lot of Cincinnati stuff. One, I don't have any, and then two, yeah, just I don't want any.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like 15. I'd have been 15 when that trade went down, and I like wept. Like it was more than just a tear. It was like a legitimate like little kid crying because he dropped his ice cream.
Yeah.
And my mom told me, she's like, you just have to remember he just wants to go home. That's what he's doing. He's just going home, and after watching the Junior documentary, I was kind of like, what, as a dad, I get it. It's easier to be next to your kids if you have a family to take care of them, so I was like, I get it. It doesn't mean that I wasn't I'm not any less like heartbroken about it,
Right.
But
yeah. That, as a Seattle kid, I didn't grow up in the city of Seattle, but I grew up in the suburbs. I'm still in the suburbs of Seattle. He was everything for a lot of kids nationally, But man alive, in Seattle, he was, I mean, it was as close to godlike as you could
Mhm.
get as a kid, playing little league and everything. Always sprinted for number 24, the jerseys, every time we had, first practice or whatever, you get your jerseys.
Yeah.
Taught myself, forced myself to learn how to bat left-handed because I
So
wanted to do that so
jealous.
bad. uh, I wasn't very good from the left side, but I could do it. And yeah, I mean, hat backwards, all that stuff. He was, and not to mention, from a Seattle point of view, the Mariners, and I don't know if the rest of the country really realizes this, the Mariners would not be in Seattle if it was not for Ken Griffey Jr.
Yep, that's true.
Um, the amount of national attention he got, jersey sales, merch, all that stuff that went back into the organization. Not to mention, I mean, the team was all but packed up in semis headed to Tampa Bay in the early 90s, 91, 92. And there was a real threat of them just leaving town and going to Tampa Bay, and that would have been it. Um, Lo and behold, here comes a 19-year-old kid with major league pedigree from his dad. Everyone knew who Senior was. Senior is obviously still playing in the major leagues.
Yeah.
Coming off of a couple World Series in Cincinnati. But here comes this phenom kid that's on the cover of every baseball magazine because he's going to be the next greatest of all time kind of thing. And everyone's like, okay, well, and then they drafted him, and it's not like it took 6 years for him to get on the map. I mean, he was
Yeah.
out of the gate a superstar, and all that combined, and then of course the mid 90s, the 95 run where Junior streaking around third and the slide and all that. That once that happened, it was done. Like Nintendo came in, bought him, and then they've been here ever since, obviously for better or worse. But
Yeah. Well, I remember when Safeco first opened, they called it the house that Junior built, because
absolutely,
there was no way that would have happened if it wasn't for that 95 run, especially the 95 slide, actually making it out of the first round and
yep.
having basically Mariners fever sweeping through the city, the Northwest. I ended up moving to Portland, the Portland area, when I was
okay,
about 12 years old. So I got a little bit of it. I got to go up to Safeco the first year that it was open. I think actually that first year that it was open, one of my favorite memories was my dad and I were out on that, the center field porch out there. Mm-hmm. They had a bunch of tables and stuff. Before they had any of the tables out there, you could just go stand. And we were standing like right up next to the fence. And, he would wander back, Junior wander back and forth in center field, he's going back to our left. And my dad was trying to take a picture. And so I just yelled, I was like, hey, Junior. And he looks over and gives us a peace sign. And I was like, I could end my life right now.
Yeah.
I could die happy. That was the greatest moment.
I wish we all would have gotten more. I wish that stadium would have opened maybe a year or two earlier than it did. Because it is a beautiful stadium and it's gotten nothing but better since 01. 01, I think, is when it was open. No, 99. Sorry,
99. Yeah, it was the middle of the season, 99.
Right, and so he only got like a half season to play there, and then he was off to Cincinnati, and obviously he came back. But and I was so thrilled when he came back in 2009. But it's also one of those things where you don't want to see your hero, because last time we saw him, he's hitting 56 home runs a year. He's the best player on the planet. And then he comes back and, he's a 40-year-old man. And not to say that he couldn't do it. He actually did pretty well that first year he came back. And then 2010, obviously, the decline in production and playing time. And, it was...
that whole team was just a mess anyway. The 2010 team
was a big mess. That was a huge mess. So, and the way he went out is bittersweet. I mean, Junior always kind of did his things his way anyway, but I'm still bitter that he didn't get more of a send-off, last game of the year kind of thing. Everyone knew it was a random Monday when that all went down in the clubhouse and I've read about it, and there's still some differing viewpoints on what exactly went down, but it sounds like you're 25 games out of the playoff race. On a Monday day game, Junior's not playing. He's not in the dugout. He's maybe taking a snooze in the dugout. I mean, so what? And then, for whoever it was, I think it was Don Watsamatsu or whatever at that
Yeah,
time.
Wakamatsu, yeah.
Yeah, and or whoever, a teammate, disgruntled teammate, for them to out the clubhouse baggage, so to speak, and that to be the lasting memory. Well, not lasting. I mean, obviously he's one of the greatest of all time, but for
One
that
of the
to be the
last things you see, though.
yeah, as him getting pissed, getting in a rental car and driving to Orlando. I mean, that's not the way he deserved to go out in Seattle. And obviously, we've retired his number since then. He's in Cooperstown now. So, obviously we've had our moment with him and we'll continue and, for the rest of his life. But, that thing as far as the tip of the cap, the lap around the field or something, we didn't get that. And
Yeah.
that always kind of burned me up a little bit.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen like a Jeter-esque farewell tour, going
Absolutely.
around the entire league, getting a standing ovation at every single stadium, because no matter how many people hated him when he was playing because he wrecked their pitching
You're
staff,
right.
everybody loved him. Everybody loved the guy.
Well, and that's something that's really been amazing with this Instagram thing, because I have obviously a lot of people that are Mariners fans and Pacific
Mhm.
Northwesters that follow me, but I mean they're all over the country, if not world. And every one of them, oh, he's my favorite player growing up. I'm like, oh, where'd you grow up? And they're like, Miami or something like that. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
cool. I mean, that's one thing. Yeah. I mean, no one, and there's certain players, like I could rattle off a short list of players that I just despised as a kid, like could not stand them. But you never hear anybody, even, a Yankee fan or an AL West, rival like Texas Rangers or Oakland. No one hated Junior. I mean, he was
Yeah.
just a beloved figure across sport. I mean, he was just beloved.
Yeah, yeah. I had a buddy that came from a buddy of mine actually, who was a fan of another AL West team. Who
Mm-hmm.
he said, I hated when Griffey came into town because I knew he was going to hit 3 or 4 home runs off our pitchers. And
Yeah.
that legitimately is like the most hate I've ever heard out of
Yeah.
anybody, and that's legitimate. I mean, it's like when
Yeah.
Mike Trout comes to Seattle, he's going to hit one to straightaway center,
Yeah. And,
at least one.
yeah. And, I hear that a lot too, is like you see those Instagram posts where it's who's the GOAT, Griffey or Trout. It's always they put those two guys next to each other, which is justly so. I mean, Trout
Mm.
is potentially going to go down as the greatest player, depending on, a lot of stuff happens when you hit those mid 30s.
It's true. Natural aging is a real pain.
Yeah. And, but I mean, Trout is amazing, but, I'll click on the junior for my vote and then it'll be like Trout 65% junior. I'm like, come on, kids. Like,
Because they didn't watch them.
yeah,
That's the
like,
thing, is you can only see so many highlights and really understand. Like the Jordan documentary, you can only see
right,
so many highlights, but you got to see a collection, see a compilation, and see exactly how things went down. Like
right.
the Spider-Man catch will, in my opinion, go down as one of the greatest catches of all time.
Yeah. And the thing is, he did that, that, I don't know which one you're talking about. So there's one in the
So
early
there's
90s,
yeah,
and then there's the one where he broke his wrist and
yeah,
still caught the ball.
yeah.
So I mean, there's multiple of those catches, and that's what I try to explain to people. I did a question and answers on my live stories, and people are just asking me, how many times did you see Junior? How did you ever see him do this? Or one of the questions was, what was the best play you ever saw Junior do? I'm like, I was like, he was doing that kind of stuff on a literal daily basis. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, every game he'd do some kind of crazy catch. Maybe that he didn't climb the wall every game, but I mean, he was just ridiculous. He was the best player on the planet for a solid 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
people can debate, well, Bonds did this. Oh, well, Bonds, get out of here. Bonds was
Bonds can't even sit at the table. Sorry.
Bonds was half the fielder defensive
Mm-hmm.
player as Junior, and you could say that they may have been on the same level offensively, but we know that giant asterisk in the corner that's begging for that conversation to happen. So yeah, Bonds nowhere even close, nowhere close.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So is there something that's kind of like your unicorn, something that you're looking for that you're trying to get or that you just can't really find?
Well, if you would have asked me about 6 months ago, I would have said a game used bat, but I actually ended up pulling the trigger on one of those and found one. and I think it was I posted it when I hit 1,000 followers, because in my mind I was like, oh, I'll never get more than 1,000 followers. And so now that I've got like, over three, I'm like, damn, I wish I would have posted that a little bit later, but maybe I'll repost it. But that was pretty
Yeah.
far. That was pretty high up the list. And the game used bat I did get was one from about the 2000 to 2002 era. And the only reason I really wanted it, one, because those bats are cheaper, just because he wasn't hitting 56 home runs a season.
Yeah.
And he was injured a lot during those years. And it's the classic, black, C271 model bat or whatever he was
Yeah,
swinging.
I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but
I think that's it. But instead of Mariners or Cincinnati Reds on there, it just says Swingman. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because
nice.
if it would have said Cincinnati Reds, I would have been like, not really into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. So that one would have been my answer. But now there's a ball on eBay, and I guarantee you it's still there, because they're asking astronomical prices for it now. But it's been on there for years, and you kind of perversely watch it to see if it sells or what the price is. And it's actually one of his home run balls. It's like his 467th or something like that, and it's signed by him. And they're asking like 20 grand for it now, which is probably a pretty fair price for one of his 630 home run balls. But I will not be pulling the trigger on that. But that would be awesome. One of the actual 630 home run balls would be amazing. Anything game used, I'm in for. Right now I'm staring across the room at the batting glove, which I've posted. So the bat, I'd like to get an actual glove, like
that'd be sweet.
One of his gloves. I doubt I'll ever find a gamer, because they don't go through multiple a season unless something crazy happens. But that one that would be epic. So
yeah, a glove would be unreal. Absolutely unreal. That'd be crazy to find and have. So is that how you come across a lot of the stuff that you get?
Well, I'm fortunate enough, yes, to answer your question short, yes, that's eBay is a lot. And you got some of the really obscure stuff. I mean, if you search Ken Griffey Jr., there's like literally 50,000 items that come up, if not more.
Jerseys, cards,
cards, balls, bats. But if you get real specific with your searches, which is some of the more oddball things that I've come across, a lot of them was from just years of collecting. But I mean, since this Instagram feed has taken off, I have been more prone to search eBay for something really weird. There's stuff that I know people are like, well, I can't believe you hasn't posted that yet. And I probably have it. It's just I'm looking for that really weird oddball thing that no one's seen. But yeah, eBay is where I get a lot of stuff, but I'm also fortunate enough to still be in the Seattle area. So any of the memorabilia or sports card shops that are still in existence around here, they always have some pretty good junior stuff in there. So I'll snag stuff from there too. But
yeah. One of the ones you posted recently is the Silly Slammer. That you even say that's a weird one. And I remember those. Like, I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, where did you find that one?
That was an eBay purchase. And you start searching really weird stuff. And I agree. I remember those too. And that's the cool thing about this account is it's not the memorabilia. The memorabilia is cool too. But those goofy things are fun. But it's people like your age, my age, and older that are going, oh my God, I totally have forgotten about that. I'm so glad you posted that. I haven't thought about that in 30 years. I get such a kick out of that when people like that, the synapses in their brain fires and they go, holy crap, I totally had forgotten about that. But that was a weird one. Even for me, I'm like, God, do I want to post this? It's like, it's so strange.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you did the picture of you actually slamming the thing down, because that was like the commercial too, was slamming down so it talks. Yeah, I totally remember that. That was amazing. What's the most expensive item in your collection?
It's definitely the bat, I would imagine. The bat, if you get one from the Mariners era, I mean, you're looking at 10 grand probably easily. That one, with the boom in memorabilia in sports and sports cards in general, that one might be pushing that now. But people ask me that all the time. Well, how much is this worth? How much is that worth? And honestly, I don't know. A lot of the memorabilia, I know what I paid for it, but some of the
Yeah.
stuff was, 10 years ago. I don't know. And I always say, it's whatever someone will pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
If someone really wants it, they're going to pay higher than you would think. And people, I also get hit up constantly for, if I want to sell some of my stuff, and I'm a hoarder by nature, but especially with this stuff, I won't be selling anything anytime
Yeah.
soon. Yeah.
Have you seen? Okay, so this was my favorite baseball card ever. It was a Griffey card.
Mm-hmm.
It was from the 1996 triple play sets, because those sets were $1, and I would get like 50 cents a day for doing chores.
Right.
My mom was really paying out that summer, so every other day I would go to like Target or whatever, and I would buy a pack of cards, and I got a couple. Like I said, I think that's how I got like my millions of Paul Molitor cards. But I had my favorite card ever was a Griffey card out of those sets. It was a Bomb Squad card. Have you seen those?
It all sounds familiar. Triple play was interesting, and I reached back, and I don't know if you can see this. That stupid keyframe.
Oh yeah.
And so triple play there. I've got a box. This is from 1993. Oh, it's upside down. But yeah, triple play 1993 Donruss. I do remember the card you're talking about. I don't think I actually have that one. And one thing, people are always messaging me too and going, hey, do you want these? $5 a pop or whatever. And they're loose cards, right? And I would love to have them, but I also don't want to have like 20,000 loose baseball cards. So I've really limited myself to only buying PSA 10 versions of whatever Griffey card. But yeah, I definitely remember those. And I remember triple play being cool because you could get multiple packs, like 4 packs for $1 or something.
It was so cheap. It was like the best summer of my life.
Yeah, they were definitely the low end of the stuff. But again, junk wax, it was all low end at that point. But yeah, no, I totally remember that card.
Yeah, that was my most prized possession. I remember that summer I bought a Beckett and looked up looked up the value of it. At the time, it was worth $8, like legitimately worth $8 according to the Beckett. And then we moved, and I have not seen it since. I was 12 years old and I have not seen that card since. Still very upset about it, 20 some odd years later. But.
Well, I guarantee you could not only find the card again, but probably find it graded and slabbed. And that's really what started my collecting again, was going and getting, because when we were kids, like grading wasn't a thing.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, hard plastics were the screw down plastics and all that.
Yeah, I had it in a hard plastic, just like that, screwed it down, everything. I think there was like a Frank Thomas on the other side. It was like a 2-pack.
Yeah, but I mean, like grading wasn't a thing. So when it became a thing again, I was like, oh, I started seeing cards that I had and have in the next room from when I was a kid. Everyone had those white long boxes of, and the top loaders, the plastic top loaders. And so I started seeing all these cards again. And then I was like, oh, well, I'll just get a few of my favorites that are graded now. Of course, every time I open the eBay app, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that one. I love that one. I love that one. So then, poof, then I've got hundreds of PSA 10 junior cards now. And it's a blessing and a curse because, I could be putting money towards other things, but it's just, it's a nostalgia factor. It brings us all back to the early mid 90s when we didn't have jobs and we didn't care, and you traded cards with your friends and you watched games and played Griffey baseball on Super Nintendo. It was the greatest era.
It was. So that actually, okay. So which game do you prefer? Do you prefer Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball or Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run?
I mean, I played more of Winning Run. Again, just nostalgia factor, probably the first one, but I definitely put way more hours into the second one, the Winning Run. And then people are always saying the N64 one was better than both of them.
Oh, Slugfest. Yeah,
Slugfest. And I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of got out of video games about that time, so I just didn't play them. But that was actually, those might be two of my more treasured items on the Griffey Collector account is the sealed Super Nintendo games. I have both of them. I have the first one
Nice.
and the second one. And they're still in the original cellophane from what was it, 94 and 96 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, those I just played hundreds of hours of that game. And that was, that was with I have a distinct memory too of my buddy that lived up the street. We would be on the phone. We didn't have these gaming headsets. And be on the
Yeah.
phone. So you're playing like, with your head cocked and like talking on the phone. We're each playing the same game, but we're not playing each other, obviously, because the technology didn't exist.
Yeah.
But good Lord, had it though. Jeez, we would have been on there for hundreds of hours playing
Oh
that
yeah,
game.
never would have seen the sun ever.
No.
Yeah. No, did you ever use the cheat code on Winning Run when you were Griffey? Did you know about
No.
that?
Actually, was it where he was positioned in the box or something like that?
So it's like what you had to do is you had to like I can't remember exactly how it worked, but you had to have enough time to push in like 3 buttons before the pitcher threw the pitch. And it only worked with Griffey. And then you hit up and swing, and then he hit a home run every time. And so I would be sitting there trying to push in the buttons and do the code. My friends were like, no, they throw the pitch right away, and I'd miss it because I was messing around.
I love those
Yeah.
games. I love it. And, quite honestly, I mean, I was just playing what's it, the show now.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And I'm not a big gamer, but I was bored, COVID times and all that. And so I was like, okay, what the hell? I'll download MLB because I know that Junior was on the cover of it for years, and I was thinking to myself how far those games have come. But Junior's, there was other baseball games for Super Nintendo back in the mid '90s. But
Yeah, like Bases Loaded and whatever. Yeah.
right, and those were good games too. But as far as like just personality of the game and graphics, especially for that second one, Winning Run was, I mean, that was way before its, ahead of its time. And now you look at these games, you can see, I mean, they had a lot of influence on these games now with the player animations, when they got hit by a pitch in Winning Run, they would kind of shake their fist at the screen and all that. It was great. I mean, it was the predecessors to all these games, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, EA Sports it was a thing, but they didn't make
they
those.
were.
That was,
yeah.
that was just independent releases from Nintendo.
Yeah. So I had a buddy hack my Nintendo Classic. So we have Super Nintendo games on it. We have Presents Major League Baseball and Winning Run both on there. But we play the first one. I play the first one with my son because it's easier a little bit. I mean, it's still like, I have to have auto fielding on, but but when he found out that the batters reacted when you hit him with a pitch, I didn't like. He walked me around the bases for like 20 minutes. He's like, Dad, it's so funny. He's 6, but so he thinks it's hilarious. But I'm just like, just throw me the ball, just let me hit it.
Well, that's what's so cool too. With the overall theme of my account is nostalgia, and guys like you that now have young kids that were our age when we were discovering all this stuff, and the nerd culture that has become popular again in the last 10-15 years, and with Junior's resurgence and kind of pop culture over the last 5 or 10, you're getting to experience all that stuff all over again. It's phenomenal. I love it.
Yeah. It actually is really cool because we actually live in Phoenix, down the street from the Peoria Sports Complex, and so I'll take him to games. We'll watch games together. And we go to Mariners games. We go to the backfields and we see the number 24 right there. I say, Wilson. My son's name is Wilson. I say, Wilson, this is the greatest player that I have ever seen play baseball. There's no other player that will ever come close. Like, don't let anybody tell you. If they tell you otherwise, they're wrong, because this is the way it is. This way it'll always be,
And that's kind of back to what we were talking about with Trout. Trout, numbers wise, by the time he's done, might be close. The way he plays, I mean, that's the difference. Junior had such a swag and an attitude to him. Trout, he is so boring, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing in the year 2021 for a pro sports athlete to be boring. That's not a bad thing. But that's what will separate Junior from Trout. I don't care if Trout hits 200 more home runs than Junior, which I don't think he will. But if he does, that's the factor. I mean, he is boring, and Junior was about as flashy as you could get. And he was a showman, and it was so cool. I wish as a kid I would have made more of an effort to pay attention, but I mean, you're a kid, you don't
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
just to realize what you were seeing in front of you on a daily basis. So you turn on, channel 11, I think was where the games were when we were a kid in Seattle. And, just to casually turn on the TV and watch a Junior for 9 innings would be epic now. And I wish I would have, taken a little bit more, paid a little bit more attention to that. But I mean, that's the old sob story. Everyone that gets old says stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So we talked a little bit about the 95 slide. Do you remember where you were? Like, were you watching that game when that went down?
Yeah, I was living in Issaquah, Washington, which is actually the same town that Junior lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was 13, probably about there. And it wasn't just that game. There was about 2 months that led up to that, of just this amazing comeback from like 15 games out.
Oh yeah, they were dead to rights in September.
Oh yeah, I mean, they were literally like a dozen games out at least, with about a month to go, and they end up, that one game playoff a few weeks prior to the 95 slide against the Angels. That one game playoff in the Kingdom was epic. But as far as that 95 slide, yeah, I was just in my house. I think I was watching it with my dad, and just on a crappy little television. And yeah, Edgar hit that double, and Junior was on first, and we all knew how fast he was. I think the rest of the country was kind of shocked about how fast he was going around those bases. But yeah, double down the line, it was guaranteed, and he beat that throw by a mile too. That wasn't even close.
It wasn't even close. Yeah.
And that was on a turf hop too. I mean, and everything was in the left fielder's favor as far as getting that ball back in the infield. And yeah, Junior that was the fastest I ever saw him run. And I think a lot of people say that. That was just, he was flying around those bases. But yeah, as soon as he was safe, and I go nuts, my dad's going nuts. I think if I remember correctly, I didn't know what to do. As a Seattle kid, we had never been good at anything.
No, not at that point.
the 79 Sonics were before me, so I knew of them. But I mean, when he crossed home, I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. So I think I actually just ran around the house. But I mean, I went outside and just ran around the house. A lap. Yeah, I didn't know what the hell to do. So yeah, that was a great. Of course, and then I think we lost 4-2 in the American League Championship.
Yeah,
against
I still hate the Indians because of that, by the way.
Yeah, I've always had a sour taste in my mouth for the Indians. They ruined such a storybook thing. And it was truly magical. I mean, that whole 95 season for the Mariners was just, it was epic, to the point now where people around here in Seattle will never get tired of hearing it about it. But the Mariners as an organization have milked that for the last 25 years, and it's like, okay, can we please make the playoffs now and build more of those memories instead of looking back every season? It's like, wasn't that great? It's like, yeah, it was great. Let's go ahead and do something now.
Need more of it. Need a whole lot more of it.
That's the frustration. I mean, it's been pushing 20 years now. Since
20 years this year.
20 years this year.
Yeah, because it was 0-1 with 116 wins, and then you go and lose to the Yankees, of course, in the ALCS. Yep. And it has left that specifically, I think, left a sour taste in the mouth of a lot of people, especially since the next year, nothing. You expect the team to come back and do something, but you don't.
Yeah, it's a frustrating organization. I mean, we're the best we've looked in easily a decade, I think. Now with Kyle Lewis and Evan White and all those guys. But again, this is great, and as a Mariners fan, I'm happy about it. But I'm also pissed that it took 20 years to get here, and it was a 20-year rebuild, which is so dumb. So yeah, it's frustrating. But
yeah, speaking of which, though, I was at a game. It was 2016. It was the second to last game of the season. Actually, still in it at that point, playing the A's. and then ended up losing the game, getting eliminated from the playoffs. And my dad and I were at the game together. And we were just like, man, this is the most meaningful baseball we have watched in
Yeah.
15 years. And it's not even playoff baseball.
Right.
You know?
I've said that so many times. I'm like, I want them to win the division or make the wild card and get the playoffs. That'd be great. But just make it where we're not 15 games out come September. I just it's such a blow to a fan's ego, heart, everything every single year when we're not even in contention for a wild card spot. The last few years we flirted with it, and last year's a weirdo abbreviated season, like we were a couple games out, but again, they started the classic Mariners. This is what they do every year. It doesn't matter if we have an amazing team or some team that's expected to lose 100 games. We come out, we win the first,
Always win opening day. Always win opening day.
Always win opening day. But even through like 20, 25 games, we'll be, 5-6 games over 500. Like, this is it. It's happening. and then by the All-Star break, we're 500 or below. And, it's
looking forward to Seahawks football.
Yeah, it's crazy. What an organization.
It is. It's unreal. But yeah, that year, I think it might have been the last time that they were close. And then, Dipoto went and ripped everything apart. Yeah. And then you saw a lot of frustration on like Facebook and stuff. People like, this is unreal. Just move the team, just get rid of it, just put us out of our misery. But I do feel like, as somebody who pays pretty close attention to the team, like I paid a lot of attention to the farm system. Like, it actually feels like there's finally a plan, though.
I would absolutely agree. And the talent is all there. Again, I guess I have to get over it. I guess a lot of fans have to get over it. It's just so maddening that this kind of transformation, it didn't happen in 2002, 2004, 2005. We sat around and brought in people like Milton Bradley and, kind of the Cocoa Crisps of the world, and like these weird veterans that still had some wheels left, but, they're going to win you a World Series. And, to Dipoto's credit, he has come in and ripped it apart. But that's what the 3 GMs in front of him should have done, and they didn't. And it's just
instead of paying Robinson Cano all the money in Seattle, because that was,
I know. And to take it back to Junior, and as much as I loved him coming back, and I did, I'm so happy he finished as a Mariner those 2 years, even the way it ended. But as a Mariners fan that wants to see a World Series, I was like, God, what are you doing? Like, he's not going to play every day. I love it. It's great. But it wasn't going to win you anything.
Yeah.
And I think above all else, that's what the Mariners fans want. And that's what Junior fans want. That's what Junior wants. That's what everyone wants. Is just win. Just get to a World Series. It'll be heartbreaking to lose one after all this, but just get to one.
And that's the thing, is like right now, like I just want playoffs. I'm a co-host of the Baseball Together podcast. We have new episodes every Tuesday, but my co-host is a Yankees fan, and he's all about like the division race. He's like, you got to win the division. You got to win the division. I'm like, that's easy for you to say.
Right.
It's like, but for somebody who hasn't had a team in the playoffs for 20 years, I'm all about the wild card. Just got to get there. That's all I care about. Just get there. Just be present, and then you have a chance to win,
Yeah. And, you talk to a Red Sox fan or a Cubs fan, and they go, oh, you don't know nothing about streaks and droughts and all that. I'm like, yeah, true. You guys win like 100 years without winning the World Series. But multiple times sprinkled in that 100-year streak was multiple division championships. Hell, they even got to World Series and lost. But for the Mariners organization, from 1977 to present day, to have like literally, the 2001 season is obviously the best season in baseball history as far as wins go, but really that one gets overshadowed even by the 95 drama and Junior coming around third, and the nostalgia factor. For your franchise to hang their hat on those 2 seasons out of 40 or something,
40 seasons now, man,
that's rough. And so I understand the Cubs and the Red Sox have these epic droughts of no World Series, but they had playoffs. They had World Series in there. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
rough, man. And it's the plight of a Mariners fan is, it's one that lacks joy. That's for that's for
Yeah,
sure.
it really is.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's one thing I always ask people. It's like, why the heck are you still a Mariners fan?
yeah.
So real quick, why the heck are you still a Mariners fan? But if it wasn't for Junior, would you still be a Mariners fan?
Um, I think you could ask almost anyone that is a sports fan in a town that they spent their whole life in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I, I would feel hard pressed to root for any team other than the Seattle team. I'm a huge Junior fan, a huge baseball fan, but I'm also even more so probably a bigger soccer fan of all things.
Okay.
And I just realized that I have this Lumen Field as my chat
Yeah.
background, which I didn't even put two and two together until I just looked up. But yeah, so that the passion of a Sounders fan is, you would root for no other club
Hmm.
besides that club. And I think, a true sports fan, these guys that switch hats like they do their socks, are like, oh, I moved to Boston. Now I'm a diehard Boston fan. It's like, well, that's kind of weird. But no, I don't think I would ever root. And yes, I would be a Mariners fan. I mean, they've had some great. Junior was the flagship and the face of baseball and the face of the Mariners in the '90s. But there's been some crazy other players that are epic. I mean, Edgar Martinez is by
Hmm.
far my second favorite, not just Mariner, but player of all time.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, I mean, if Junior wasn't there, I would have just probably latched on to Gar and it would have been Edgar Collector on Instagram instead of Griffey Collector.
Well, because you can't latch on to Ichiro because you already got the Ichiro lady who has
Right.
that. So
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Ichiro is different from those two, and I love Ichiro. I mean, he's a Mariner, obviously. He'll go to the Hall of Fame as a Mariner. Um, but the difference between Ichiro and Edgar and Junior, if you're going to put those three on like the Mariners Mount Rushmore or whatever,
mhm.
um, there was always a bit of distance from Ichiro. You could say it was the language barrier, but from what I understand, Ichiro speaks
Fine
very,
English.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
great English, and he just kind of never, um, he never. I mean, every fans loved him, but as far as like interviews and getting to know him as a person, you really didn't. Me as a fan, I never really latched on to Ichiro, other than just being in amazement of his consistency and ability. But Gar is just so lovable, and Junior's, he'll always be the beloved son of this city. And but
Mhm.
yeah, Ichiro, he was here forever. I get it, but I never felt that kind of that emotional connection with him like I did those other two.
I'm glad I'm not the only one because I've always felt that way. And like you said, I don't know if it's that there was a distance that you didn't get to see his actual personality, but yeah, I was always in awe of what he did. I remember that
Yeah,
like 2 weeks into his rookie season, he gunned down whoever it was at third base to David
yeah,
Bell. It's like, holy smokes, what do we have
yeah,
here? Not only can he run, he can throw. What's going on? And then constantly, at the wall making plays and, maybe not necessarily climbing the wall, but he was there.
yeah, yeah. And I, he just didn't have that. It would have been funny to see, Ichiro in 1989 come up and do what he did in the 2000s, but in that era, and
Hmm.
see if kids would have latched onto him in the Kingdom or something like that. I think it would have been hard.
Yeah.
He The personality just wasn't on display for him, and it was hard to kind of get to know him as well as you can a player. But yeah, I mean, I love Ichiro. Loved watching him. I'm a stat freak. I love numbers and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And yeah, I mean, he's undoubtedly a Hall of Famer, and just the stuff he did per season, 200 hits per season for 10 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That that's video game numbers. I mean, that is
Yeah.
just,
It is.
it's freakish.
It was like watching a video game with Ichiro. Like, yeah, just unreal. But I have two more questions for you before we
Yeah,
finish up here. First off, so the Mariners got no hit by the Orioles yesterday.
yeah,
So first, like I feel like the Mariners get no hit more than like anybody, right?
yeah,
Like you're not gonna if you're gonna throw no hitter, it's gonna be against the Mariners.
yeah.
But every year we see the wheels come off. I'm worried that this is gonna be where the wheels come off this year. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
Um, I think we'll look back in September when we're more than likely double digits out of first.
Uh-huh.
And I think you'll have multiple examples of that you could peg where the wheels have come off. But yeah, I mean, up until now, what are we, 30 games in or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and
Sitting
to
in
go
second
back,
place, and
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you could say this was maybe the turnaround, but I think people get fooled. The casual fan get fooled every year because they come out literally swinging, and
Mhm.
they're in first by 3 or 4 games in the first month or something like that. Or they start out winning 10 in a row. A few years ago, they had won like they were like 20-3 or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, they
Like
had that
super.
hot start in 2019,
Yeah,
started in Japan. Yeah, it was like, man, Mariners are going to win the World Series this year.
I,
And it's like
I
the people who know, it's like, well, hold on, just a minute,
well, and what the casual fan that brings their kids to the ballpark once or twice a year doesn't understand is the hitters have the advantage in the first like month of the season.
hmm
The pitchers are still getting their feel and still getting their groove,
hmm
and I don't think that's a coincidence. I mean, every every year we come out swinging, we're in first after the first month, and then the pitchers across the league kind of start getting into their groove, and then we start getting no hit, and the games start piling up in the loss column. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to make the playoffs this year. It'd be awesome
No.
if we do. I'm not that familiar with the farm club. I know it's good, but the farm system, I mean, and
Mhm.
we're still realistically probably 3 or 4 years away from being like legit year after year contenders,
Mhm.
sadly. But
Yeah. And that was actually going to be my next question is like, since this year, we already counted as not going to make the playoffs. And, I wasn't planning on making the playoffs this year at all.
yeah,
That was nothing. I was like, if the young guys get called up, Jared Kellenick, if he does eventually going to get to come up, that he's just going to be getting his big league experience this year.
yeah,
So I'm not too worried about it. But I was thinking maybe possibly next year is the year the Mariners would make the playoffs.
yeah.
I mean, you said 3 or 4 years. Do you think any of those guys are going to have that big of an impact, or do you think it's going to, like you said, be a few years out?
Oh, I think next year could be considered the first year that it'll be disappointing if we aren't contending for the division.
Uh
Like
huh.
if we don't contend for the division this year, it's like, okay, well, we're still young, we're still doing that. You know, when did Jerry show up, 2 or 3 years ago, as far as
Um,
GM go, Depoto? He's
I
been
want to say
here
he was
by the
like
end of the season.
2015 or maybe 16.
Okay,
16.
okay, well
It was 16.
that makes my potential point even better. So if at the end of this season he would have had half a decade in Seattle to try to rebuild and do this stuff. If we're not flirting with division titles by the end of the 2022 season, I think
hmm
justly so we'll kind of start to get pissed again and
hmm
frustration and all that kind of stuff. But those kids that they did, there's another one,
Julio
the one,
Rodriguez.
yeah, those kids that didn't start with the club this year, I get it. Like I get the old baseball approach of you don't
Yeah.
want to bring them up too soon and all that stuff. But at the same time, man, give us something. Even if it's 100 loss team, give us those kids. Let us get familiar with them. Let us watch. And I know it's a process, and the scouts do all that stuff. But
My thing is that I feel like it's hard to market a team if they're in AAA. You can't market
yeah,
your guys in the minor leagues. They've got to be
right,
on the big league roster. They've got to be where people are seeing them every day. And if
right,
if that's all you're trying to do at this point,
yeah.
market them, get them up to where you can get eyes on them.
I know it's not the same GM, and I know it's different personnel and all that, but I just have nightmare flashbacks, and it'll be with Kyle Lewis if it happens, but is the equivalent. But old Adam Jones that we
Oh
traded
man,
to Baltimore 10 years ago for like Mike Timlin and whoever.
Bedard.
Yeah, Bedard. That's who I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Bedard. If we end up not flirting with the division in the next year or two, and Kyle Lewis gets frustrated and wants more money, and I swear to God, if we let that kid go, the way that we did Adam Jones and the laundry list of prospects
Uh-huh.
that we've let go over the last 30 years, uh, it's big talk to say I'm done watching the Mariners, but it would be really hard as a fan to sit there and watch him and any of the other younger talent head out the door for some
Yeah.
awful trade for prospects or something like that. It would be the worst.
Yeah. And that is the thing that's scary about it, is that, you're curious what kind of patience the front office has with these kids, that like, okay, we're going to give them 3 years to win, 4 years to make the playoffs, whatever. And then what? Like, they've sold these guys hard to the entire fan base for, this is what, 3 years now, 4 years now on a lot of these guys, especially Kyle Lewis. And if they get frustrated with them and then tear it all down, it's like, okay, well, now what? Like, this is supposed to be our guy to cheer for. We're supposed to be selling Kyle Lewis jerseys, and we're supposed to be able to cheer for him for years to come. But at the same time, like, now you're taking him away from us. Like, what? Because there were a few years that I was going to games that, it was like, golly, it was 2008 to 2012, I think, that I would go to a game and I wouldn't buy anything. I'd just buy a Mariners t-shirt. I wouldn't buy a jersey or anything. I was like, I don't know if that A is going to be on clearance next week, because B, that guy's gone.
It just seems like to me that I would like to see the Mariners. I don't like their ownership. I don't want to. We don't have to get into this, but
it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. I don't know who I want to own the team, but it just seems like it doesn't seem like they're the right fit. And they're an improvement over, I forget his name, but the gentleman that owned Nintendo, the old Japanese fellow that owned the team and never saw them play once. even when they played in Tokyo, he didn't come to the Tokyo Dome and watch them. That is what you call an engaged owner. So I'm glad that he doesn't own the team anymore. But was it Stanton? Not Stanton. Anyway, the guy that owns the majority share of the team now. Not a big fan of him.
Yeah.
So
it's tough. It's brutal. I mean, I call this my monthly therapy session. Anybody who joins me is sitting on the couch and we're talking it out. So I appreciate you joining me, Evan. I really do.
For sure.
We had a chance to hash it out a little bit and talk about your Griffey collection. That's awesome. If you haven't seen him on Instagram, check out the Griffey Collector. If you're a Griffey fan or even just a baseball fan, he's got tons of great memorabilia, awesome pieces. Really appreciate you coming on again. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I will catch you next time.
Yep, thanks.
Well, that was Evan Kolius, the Griffey Collector. Thank you again to Evan. That was a great time, great interview. I really enjoyed talking with him about that, because I've said before, I was a massive Griffey fan growing up. Idolized Griffey, favorite player, still is my favorite player ever. That was a ton of fun talking to him. If you don't follow him on Instagram, go follow him. Again, that's the Griffey Collector. The Mariners actually just went final tonight, beating the Rangers. That puts their record in May to 11-15. Get a little bit closer to 500 for the month would be excellent. But anyways, thank you again for joining me, baseball family. Before I go, don't forget to jump on baseballtogether.com, where you can go to the specific Seattle merch page. You just go to podcasts and drop down to Seattle Baseball Together, and there I have all of our Seattle Baseball Together merchandise. And all you have to do is click on whichever one you like. It'll take you over to our shop, the Big Baseball Together shop. It's actually 9plus Us is what we call our clothing line right now. And just choose your size, and then at checkout use code CPOD, SEAPOD, for 15% off. Again, that is CPOD at checkout for 15% off. But baseball family, thanks for joining me this month. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review. Tell your friends about the podcast. Have them come on over and join us for a monthly therapy session as Seattle Mariner fans. And baseball family, I will catch you next month.